do a bit of a chat on the idea of being stuck, if you like, on twin flame experience journey, and what like mindset it's helpful to have. So basically, I think it's just a really common thing. I've heard forums aren't great. I'm not going to preface with all the stuff that people talk about on twin flames really, but because I think it's quite there's quite a lot of hold up in twin flame forums and communities, and I've mentioned in a previous video that people kind of make it out to be worse than it is sometimes, to the point that people get to a fatalist mentality on actually what it takes to overcome obstacles that come in twin flames. But I think people, I've seen this. I can't believe I'm finally at this place. But the idea that separation is actually a gift in twin flame journey, because it's a really horrible, 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 horrible time for many reasons. Because basically your soul is like basically every second at you, like, I want to be with the other half of my soul. I want to be with the other half of my soul. I want to be with the other half of my soul. I want to be with the other half of my soul. But at the same time, you're kind of inevitably going to have to work on yourself. You'll be forced to work on yourself if you've not got that distraction, because it's so easy. And I think this is why separation tends to happen in the beginning, is that because you've got such this sense of bliss with your twin, you don't always do the inner work unless you're in a situation which means that you're like, you can do the inner work, but after a while, it's not about you don't do the inner work, but often, like when you get into arguments and your triggers come up, basically you end up separating if you can't tolerate each other, because you're basically, you've both got too many triggers that it's too easy to trigger each other, and then it becomes really, really toxic and unhealthy and dangerous for you both, in whatever way that is, usually emotionally, but it can be otherwise. But yeah, it's a really bad time, but you've got to think, separation is actually a gift, because at the end of the day, if you try and force the reunion too early, you will probably find that the triggers come up. Like, there's nothing to say that if you work like at your your stuff and at your triggers. I don't know. I can't say how long is a piece of string, how long a person's separation is. But some people, A, don't go into separation at all, and B, sometimes people have really short separations. There's only a certain chunk of work, I believe, that every twin flame couple has, or twin flame dynamic has. And once that's overcome, you've basically got a place of union, which it takes work to maintain, but it's still possible to maintain it. And sometimes people catastrophize it to the place that it's kind of not. Um, Especially when like you've had to have a forced separation for various reasons, and that often does happen. Um, so yeah, I feel like separation, though, you have to see it as a gift, because it's a very I found it to be a very transcending sort of spiritual process, because yes, it can be hard, because when you're in separation, you are forced to look at yourself, because it's almost a motivation, I find, if you can put it that way. When you're dying for your twin, you have to look within and think, the reason I am not in union with my twin is because I have blocks going on that I need to clear before I'm able to attract my twin back into my life. And you have to face those blocks then, inevitably, because unfortunately that's the only way that you're going to heal your union. Because even if you've got some extremely keen twin, and keen is kind of a bad word and I don't like it, because it connotes stupid school crap where you've got bullying and blah blah blah. Being keen is not a bad thing, but even if you get twins, right, which naturally they're going to want to be together, even if there's a lot of triggers, naturally they want to be together. But over time and through experience, you find that you have to go through the separation, because if you don't, you won't overcome the triggers, and chances are you will damage each other and therefore damage yourself as well, because you are the same consciousness. And therefore it's not helpful and it's not healthy. And as part of becoming whole, is what I've heard, is this idea, because yourself, because it's almost natural, to be fair, once you meet your twin and you become sort of go through that honeymoon phase, you become sort of like attached because you think, oh my god, it's like the other half of my soul, I can like merge. And you're supposed to have that merging phase. Where, and it can happen in separation, it can happen out of separation. You have that merging phase where your literal cells are merging. Your like your psychologies is merging, your chakras are merging, like everything is merging, and that is supposed to happen. But naturally, at this place, you don't want to be separate, because technically you're not separate in theory, but you are separate human beings. So in the physical plane, you're human beings of your own accord. So you're not conjoined to the point where like you can't like you have to still converse in the human level where you're still acting as human beings, and you have to communicate properly and stuff like that. So this is the reason to become you have to become whole in or out of separation, because otherwise you are basically looking. It's very easy to get your wires crossed and look to your twin to heal the blocks that yourself have, and that's when things can become codependent, and that's when things can become really toxic. Sorry, I'm gonna keep my voice down a little bit because I do live in a flat. I don't want to shout too loud, but I always tend to project my voice. I went to performing arts school, and they always used to tell you project, and now when I talk, I just speak really loud. So no, yeah. So that's kind of, but you have to see it as a benefit in some way, because you've got to think there's a lot of peace and transcendent experiences when you are in separation, because you have to look at yourself, and through looking at yourself you tend to do self-work, which helps you transcend situations that you've been in. Because regardless of your twin, people say again and again throughout the twin flame journey, and these are things I'm only coming, I think it's also, if anyone's watching at this point, to think, if you don't get to a place that you are feeling this mindset towards twin flames, and you see some people's channels and you think, that's just not how I feel about it, I just want to be with my twin, that is so normal. But I feel like through experience and time, you do get to the place of thinking, like, for example, when you transcend stuff in separation, like regardless of your twin, it's when you're a twin flame, you often have like all this baggage and all these blocks that it's very difficult to carry, actually, emotionally and mentally, physically, before you actually clear it all. And you just feel so much better, obviously, when you've cleared all that stuff. You feel so much better, and when you're in a place of being weighed down by all this past life trauma and blah 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 and past karma and blah blah blah, it's not a pleasurable experience, and it's beneficial to clear it. But you feel better within yourself, regardless of your twin. And what I was saying was, in a lot of videos I see that people will talk about the journey's not about them, it's about you. It always comes back to you. It comes about, you can't be in reunion with them until you face yourself and face God and face your blocks and clear your blocks. And I might possibly do a video on how to do that. So as I say, there's so much information on the internet. I might not do it if I don't feel called to it, but it's about you. And I haven't thought like that in my whole, but it's about bringing that stuff back to you. But that's what the journey's about. You don't initially feel that way, but over time you start to, and you start to realise that that's actually the purpose. They do say that being in physical union with your twin is like the ninth most important thing, most important thing, like where the first most important thing, second most important thing is like your purpose and your actual mission and your journey and God. It's like the most important things. Physical union, though it's good, and though you see on things like Twin Flame Universe, I'm in union with two really of my twins, 1.5, shall we say, but that is an amazing thing, and there's nothing more pleasurable in an interaction with another person than to converse with your own fucking soul. You might see that I speak to this, but like in another body as well. It's a real amazing experience, because especially you will just naturally get desired outcomes from that experience, because you are speaking to yourself in essence. And so yeah, that's pretty cool. But obviously, when you're clearing all this stuff, I'd say it's a benefit, and as I say, it takes time to get to the place of like, because logistically, if separation is hard, don't get me wrong, but the reason I say, and don't get me wrong, I have not thought this the whole time, and I don't really, I do believe it now, but it's a practical mindset rather than an emotionally charged one, because you've got to think, the if you're logistically in contact with your twin, or you're in proximity of your twin, yeah, you're in contact with your twin, so you're having conversations, but you've got all of these blocks to clear. Like, that is what like twins as well, they're here to clear the collective. They're not just here to clear themselves. So it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of work to take on, really, because you're not only clearing your own blocks, but you're clearing the blocks that you see within the world in order to heal the collective. So, like, it's a lot of work, and if you think about it that way, it makes a lot of sense to how much work it actually is. um but it's a lot of work, and it's a lot to consider, and it's a lot to work through. um but if you're in contact with your twin, like, logistically, when you're thinking, oh my god, I just want to be in contact with my twin, why don't they contact me, and the blocking and blah blah, all that stuff, the running and the chasing, but you've got, I've had a couple of conversations with my twin, actually, while we've been in a long separation. Actually, I wouldn't say like long, often like 20 years or anything, but a contact where things have been really unhealed, still a lot of unhealed wounds, almost at the point of like frantic, talking to them, because of the push pull as well. This is another really important thing to figure out, because the push pull thing is the fear. You get fear with fear of harming your twin, fear of just fear overall, fear of situations, fear of yourself, fear of outcome, just fear of the unknown, everything, fear. So what happens is, you have this energy of fear, your twin pulls back, but then your twin wants to help you with that fear. So there's a push. So they push you, and you get scared and you freak out. So that's the push pull, and vice versa. But when you surrender that fear to the divine, you clear that energy, and it just becomes neutral, and that fear is then gone. So then you can come to your twin with a particular calm, and they will clear their fear, and they will come to you with a particular calm. So there's not that sort of frantic energy, because though it can be exciting, and I've heard people talk about this, I think especially it's not, it is and it's not. I think in the beginning there's a bit of fear that comes up. It's when things start to come up, and you've still got the honeymoon phase memories, but you've got that bit of push and pull, and you think, and it's a little bit like, oh, like butterflies, and wow, they're so this and that. But at the end of the day, it's not very comfortable, and it's not sustainable, and it's difficult to maneuver, to the point where it makes me anxious. And though I would still benefit from that interaction, because it would be my twin, it's not going to be something that creates union, because that aspect alone, because you've got to think, what you like about that interaction is your twin, and the unconditional love that is coming from the fact of you're pushing and pulling each other, but even so, you still want to interact. That is what you enjoy from that experience, rather than the fear, feeling their fear. That's not enjoyable. That doesn't feel good. People talk about that in the twin journey. It's got to feel good for it to be right. If it doesn't feel right, then it's not right. So that's something that's got to be healed, really, because you've got to think logistically. If you're in separation with your twin, and then you have contact with them unhealed, you'll go through the push pull, and that will be really uncomfortable, very anxiety provoking. Most likely it will start an argument. There'll be defensiveness. There'll be what I've noticed with having really small interactions with my twin is there's hostility, and there's masking, like, to the point where you can tell, should I say, underneath, that they're being inauthentic. And it really gets under my skin, because there's nothing I hate more than inauthenticity, and I don't really know exactly why that is. Maybe it is because I'm a twin flame, and that I need authenticity in order to be mirrored back to myself. And also, I hate people being inauthentic, because people lie in order to cause chaos, and that also annoys me. But I really hate inauthenticity, and twins get inauthentic when they're defensive. They don't act from their core truth. It's not necessarily about being full on exactly who you are all the time, even with your twin, because that can be a bit too intense. You have to be able to contain yourself, because but often that place can come from a bit of this like sort of bleed that you go through, if you will, when you're separated with your twin. It can be a really piercing and difficult experience, but obviously over time you will heal it, and you can actually contain yourself, because obviously it is quite intense to just be 100%, this is my full whole soul all the time, and here I am, and it's a lot. Not that So anyway, because obviously you want to have a balanced, normal, healthy human relationship, don't you? Um, so yeah. If back to if you were to be in contact when you're supposed to be in separation, because sorry, I have to quickly say as well, twins go into separation for the benefit of each other. You've got to think as well. If they weren't working from unconditional love, they would not be in separation because or they wouldn't be in contact at all, let's put it in this way. But it can be a very compassionate thing to actually not contact your twin when they want to contact you, but you know that they need space to heal. When you know they need space to heal and they need space to actually process their triggers in order to heal themselves and therefore heal the collective, and then in theory come back to you if that's the right thing. Because sometimes, as I say, I don't want to talk about specific dynamics because they just vary so much, it's not even worth considering at this point. But it can be a really compassionate thing, you know, for not only them but for the other twin, and often that's part of the journey as well. So as it, if you're to come back in contact when you're supposed to be in separation, there'll be all this anxiety, there'll be this push and pull, there'll be this like horrible, there'll be the fear of the unknown, and there'll be this like joint collective, because you've got to think you're the same consciousness. If you're in a mess, they're in a mess, but probably in very different ways. You know, they have the same core wounds as you, and but they might not have the same core blocks because their experiences will be different. I mean, I don't know whether they have the same core blocks. I'm not actually 100% sure, but obviously their personality, their core. Sorry, I don't want to say their core wounds. Their core fears and stuff are the same as you. Like their personality is the same. Not their personality. So I'm trying to get the right terminology. Their like way they are is the same as you, basically. But so basically, you might there might be wires crossed, and I think another issue would be that because you both have had this contact in the 5D, you'll both have this feeling of like, I see the future, I want the future where everything is healed and everything is like, you're basically at the point of wanting to get into genuine harmonious union. But at that time you won't have done enough work to be able to go into harmonious union if you haven't done all the work yet. And it will just be horrible because I don't even know how that would work, because from my experience with twins, you can want very much to be in harmonious union and you can fake it actually for a while. Before I went into separation with my twin, you tend to fake it. You tend to put on this mask. As I said, when you haven't spent enough time with your twin, you haven't really gone through that extreme pain and extreme longing of like, oh my God, where is my soul? Do you know what I mean? You haven't got to that point of like, fuck, do you know what I mean? Where is my soul? But you've basically just gone through the honeymoon phase. When they start to mask, you just think, well, I don't really know this person that well. If they want to mask with me, they can mask with me. I don't really care, you know. You do you, and I'll do me, sort of thing. Especially because I'd had other experiences with another twin, and I'd been quite a free flowing relationship. I never had massive, overly passionate. It's been a passionate relationship as a friendship goes. You know, there's been passion in it like throughout, but it's never been to that point where I've had like violent arguments with them. You know, there's not been that sort of level of like dysregulation within various aspects of the relationship, because you've also got to think your soul as is deciding. And this is another thing, because I'm going to put this in the same video, separation and union, because you've got to think as well, your soul and your consciousnesses both decide what each of you is going to pick up slack wise for each other. Really, you shouldn't be picking up slack for each other at all, apart from like in the day-to-day. Like if it means like someone's been a bit moody and then they say, do you know what, I'm sorry, like I was being a bit shitty and you know I didn't mean to say that, like, you know, let's start again, I'm just quite at the wrong side of the bed this morning. That might be something they'd be able to be like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's kind of everyday stuff that you can just like overcome. But when it comes to actually, you know, picking up giant slack for people, like someone having this gaping core wound of some issue that they've had, some core block or some like core trigger, and it comes up time and time and time again, you're just like, oh no, it doesn't matter, like, you know, they're just, you can see it, you can see what's wrong, but that's not going to be sustainable if you're just going to like paint over it like it doesn't matter, or like just completely ignore it, like, and pretend that like you're okay dealing with this like emotional attack or this like extreme violent like issue. You know, you'll have all the compassion in the world, because the whole thing about twins is unconditional love, But at the end of the day, if you're in an unhealthy dynamic, that's not going to be a sustainable situation. So many twins go into situations where they're so overcome with each other that it gets so violent and so out of control that they get into abusive relationships and stuff like that. Like, there can be any variety of situations that happen with twins, but healthily, you'd want to keep it a civil enough relationship, you know. And people can be fiery, but there's a level, that you need to be able to control yourself in order for things to not get out of hand. And that starts with not giving them too much slack and not allowing them to take too much slack either. Because when I look to issues that I may have had with my twin, is that they took quite a significant amount of slack, because I had a lot of trauma and a lot of issues when I met my twin, to the point where like I was like physically and mentally unable actually to physically like take account for a lot of stuff that I'd had going on, because I was literally just in a really bad place. So we'll just leave it that way. So they by default did take 97% of the slack, let's put it that way, or more at times, just because I physically or emotionally, mentally wasn't able to actually take that slack, because I was in a place that I had to be, and I'm not being funny, for good reason, because I took a lot of their slack for their stuff, but they also took a lot of slack for my stuff, which shouldn't really happen. They had a lot of problems as well, and I took a lot of slack for them as well. I took 99.7%+ of their slack as well. Let's not lie, because that's what twins do. They're unconditional. They have unconditional love, but it doesn't make it okay. I mean, it doesn't. I don't like the word. It doesn't make it okay, because what makes it okay and what doesn't make it okay, that's set by the law and that's set by guidelines in society, which I don't like. But healthily, taking that into account with a few grains of salt, let's put it that way, you don't ideally want to be in a place where you're both so triggered and so broken down by a variety of things that you're taking all the slack for each other, because you just get tired out and it ends up breaking down. Because as much as you take that slack from a place of compassion, it only takes something to get triggered in you that compassion will go away, because at a baseline, that is will. That compassion is coming from a place of will and not from habit and not from boundaries, because it's not necessarily about boundaries, but it's about habit. Like, if you're in a habit of holding your own weight and taking your own slack, rather than letting the other twin take all your slack, and it's good to be able to take the slack of another twin, that is fine. But if you're in a place of actually trying to take their slack, you're doing that from a place of will. And all it takes is your will to break because of some trigger that they've caused in you, that naturally that compassion will diminish. Not because they lack compassion, but because they're triggered, and because that will is not able to be as strong as it was, because they're triggered and because that's where their emotional energy is. And obviously then if they're getting defensive, they'll turn that on you, and then that will trigger you, and vice versa. And that's how the push and pull and the arguments and the toxicity starts to begin. So you've really got to clear that and take your own slack and take your own weight of problems, because I've heard that if you see the problem for what it is, it's not about pushing that onto your twin and being like, you need to heal this, you need to heal this, you need to heal this. That doesn't work. You have to do your own work, and if you are aware of that work, that is the work that you need to do, and it's usually your work. Like, it's natural for people to deflect problems upon their twin. That is part of being a mirror, and that is okay to an extent, because you can project whatever you want on your twin, because they probably won't mind, especially, but if you're in no contact, then that's fine, because that's you psychologically sorting out your stuff, because you can project whatever you want on them as long as you're not hurting them, and expressing that in the physical, because that's when things become toxic. And if you try and force a reunion, you'll find that things will only blow up again. Whereas if you're healed, if you've both got your own weight and your own slack, and you're not relying on each other. That's what Jeff and Shalia say. Shalia says that if she comes up to a block, Jeff has said to her before, like, she's wanted to go and cuddle with Jeff on the bed, right, when she's had something going on, and he said, do you know what, no, you need to heal this yourself. I cannot heal this for you. Because that's the thing, you start to look to your twin from a place of, you can heal this for me, and that can't happen. So Jeff's been like, do you know what, no, you need to heal this on your own. I can't heal this for you. You need to go and resolve this. So she's gone off, done a bit of crying, whatever, had a little relax with herself and her teddy bear, and she's come out, you know, healed from it eventually. And that was time that Jeff compassionately denied of her because she needed to heal that herself. Because if he would have gone over and had a cuddle on the bed, as much as that might be comforting, and obviously people will handle things differently, at a baseline you want to think that that boundary will be up to be like, do you know what? No, because what's she gonna do if he comes along and she's wounded by something and he's trying to comfort her? The first thing she's going to do is be shitty with him because he's triggering her. She needs to be alone to heal. And if he's even from a place of compassion, even because she's asked him to, going to be trying to support her, she's naturally going to reject him, and he's going to be wounded by that. So he's got to leave her to do her work. And I suppose ideally before you get into union and before you get, because I think something psychologically and within your inner knowing has got to be strong enough to know that you're not going to come up to too many issues or issues that you can't manage before your separation ends. You've got to know that psychologically and emotionally. And I've heard other twins say, like Twinfinity, for example, they've said that as long as you can, you've got enough of that healed to be able to move forward. That's the most important thing. I mean, it's not about having everything healed. That's not necessary because you might not need to, but as long as you have most of it healed, that's where you're going to find the best situation. So you don't have to go back into separation, because obviously the risk as well is that, I mean, everyone's journey is different, but you've always got the risk that if you clear some triggers, or you don't clear all of your triggers. It could be some twins though, they clear all their triggers, they come back together and a whole new load of triggers come up, and then they separate again, and then they heal those, and then they come back together again, and then they heal those, and it can happen as many times as needs to before they come into harmonious union. They can manage each other's triggers, because hopefully the triggers will be small enough, because I think when you've got past life triggers, inevitably I think you manage the triggers that are biggest first. I think your psychology naturally does that. They handle the big triggers first because that is the most logical way to do it. I think that's how the body works. Your attention goes to what's most of an issue. But by the time you've done that a few times or not, as the case may be, your triggers will hopefully be small enough in terms of past life triggers in order to manage them. And also you'll have tools and compassion for each other. And actually, the contrast of, I don't want to go into separation again, so the will, but will can only take you so far. Habit is more important to be able to end that separation. So yeah, I hope this helped. It was quite a long video, but I think it does have weight to it, especially if you're trying to navigate your separation. But I think overall, get some knowledge. Join channels on YouTube. Some people join courses and get coaching. I've met some twins in real life, and just like know that God's got to come first, and source has got to come first. If you haven't claimed your union with God, you won't be able to claim your union with your twin, because naturally you won't be healed in that place enough, and you won't have enough faith and truth in that place in order to have healed to the point of you've got space for your twin. That's also important to recognise. But yeah, thanks for listening.